Pete Buttigieg, whatever you feel about him, is really good, really good at going on Fox News and conveying wildly effectively the Democratic positions, the liberal ideas, and defending the movements that he represents very well, and conveying in a way that most people could kind of get their head around. It's not talking in liberal speak that's like, hey, I'm just speaking to the choir. He's really good at making it consumable and understandable by people of all different walks of life, regardless of their preconceived notions and their predetermined ideologies. So he appeared on Fox and got asked about Brett Kavanaugh being protested against and having to exit a restaurant because he was protested against. Non-violently, but it did ruin his dinner. And one of the things that happens anytime progressives, leftists, whatever, get even mildly inconvenient to conservative leaders, regardless of if there was violence or not, the conservative media apparatus makes it into the worst thing ever. Brett Kavanaugh had to evacuate the restaurant. He almost died. Blah, blah, blah. Even though the facts of the situation was there was just a protest where the people around Kavanaugh decided it was the best option for them to have him exit the restaurant. Let's watch this, and then I have much more thoughts about it. But first off, kudos to Pete Buttigieg in the way he responds to this question.
Your husband tweeted after Justice Brett Kavanaugh left a Washington restaurant due to protesters. The tweet reads, sounds like he just wanted some privacy to make his own dining decisions.
So Pete Buttigieg's husband said, sounds like he just wanted some privacy to make his own dining decisions. Hilarious, because of course it's comparing it to the privacy to make your own medical decisions in regard to abortion.
Is that appropriate, sir?
Look, when public officials go into public life, we should expect two things. One.
Okay, I'm going to stop it while we're watching. What I love that he does, he goes immediately into, here's the point I want to make. I'm not going to fall into your framing. I'm not going to apologize up front. None of that. He's also not even going to say, hey, listen, that's my husband. I don't know. But no, he's like, listen, I'm going to stand for what I believe. And I'm going to tell you exactly the point that I want to make in this appearance and not get sidetracked at all in the framing of your question or the moralizing that you're trying to do. Really good stuff.
You should always be free from violence, harassment, and intimidation. And two, you're never going to be free from criticism or peaceful protest, people exercising their First Amendment rights. Okay. And that's what happened in this case. Remember, the justice never even came into contact with these protesters, reportedly didn't see or hear them. And these protesters are upset because a right, an important right, that the majority of Americans support was taken away. Understood. Not only the right to choose, by the way, but this justice.
The other thing is you can hear the Fox News host just continually trying to butt in. Okay, yeah, but right? And Pete Buttigieg just doesn't even, as if he doesn't even hear the guy, just keeps talking right on through. And that's so good because often in Fox News appearances, if someone starts effectively conveying a progressive position or advocating their opinion well, the Fox News host will just cut them off, and then may have been a good point, but it was cut off, so no one really got the full extent of what they're trying to say. Pete Buttigieg does a great job of saying, listen, you brought me on this show to give my opinion. I'm going to finish my thought before I let you cut me off.
Was part of the process of stripping away the right to privacy. As long as I've been alive, settled case law in the United States has been that the Constitution protected a right to privacy, and that has now been thrown out the window by justices, including Justice Kavanaugh, who, as I recall, swore up and down in front of God and everyone, including the United States Congress, that they were going to leave settled case law alone. So yes, people are upset. They're going to exercise their First Amendment rights. And as long as that's peaceful, that's protected. Compare that, for example, to the reality that as a country, right now, we're reckoning with the fact that a mob summoned by the former president violently attacked the United States Capitol for the purpose of overthrowing the election and very nearly succeeded in preventing the peaceful transfer of power. But I think common sense can tell the difference.
But as a high-profile public figure, sir, are you...
So we'll let him ask his follow-up question in just a second here. But all of that, beautiful. Someone asks you, is it appropriate that your husband responded to someone getting protested against peacefully and having to end their dinner early because they felt uncomfortable by those protests and it wasn't pleasurable, I presume, to be eating in the presence of that? Was it appropriate for him to make somewhat of a joke of saying, hey, look, he's annoyed that he was protested against because he didn't feel like he had the privacy to eat his meal? Well, women we're just taking away their privacy to make decisions about the body. And Pete Buttigieg is asked, is that an appropriate response? And instead of going, well, I think that, he goes, let me make my point, but then answer your question. Absolutely, because your freedom to protest, your freedom of speech is profoundly important, and public leaders, public representatives, and people in positions of power need to be aware that if they step into those positions, as long as it's peaceful, they have to be ready for as much peaceful protests, peaceful expressions of people's negative sentiments against them as the people want. And so if you become a Supreme Court justice, you decide to overturn an individual right, then yes, you have to be ready anytime you go in public to be protested against. That's part of the job description. And Pete Buttigieg does a good job of saying, listen, any one of us who steps into that position, a position like that, a position in the public eye, understands that's what we're signing up for. And that's completely appropriate and completely fine to happen to us as long as it's peaceful. But what I love he did too is he goes, he didn't say it this way, but what's more important is the fact that, and then lays out all of these people's rights being taken away. And also you compare this to, and he gets in a little piece about the January 6th insurrection as well, saying you compare a peaceful protest to the violent insurrection, not even comparable. Just hits all of the points to make someone watching who is a right winger and doesn't want to contend with these facts, probably makes them very uncomfortable.
Comfortable with protesters protesting when you and your husband go to dinner at a restaurant?
Protesting peacefully outside in a public space? Sure. Look, I can't even tell you the number of spaces, venues, and scenarios where I've been protested. And the bottom line is this. Any public figure should always.
And then it seems like the Fox News host thought, if I frame this from Pete Buttigieg's perspective and say, are you publicly saying now that you're okay with people protesting you and your husband while you're at dinner? Probably a little bit, honestly, trying to say, if you say this right now, you're going to be inviting that from the Fox News audience going forward. Do you want to rethink it? And Pete Buttigieg goes, as long as it's peaceful, absolutely, which is a very brave thing to say because it is kind of inviting Fox News hosts to go, or Fox News viewers to go, fine, we're going to show Pete Buttigieg, we're going to find where he's at dinner and protest against him. And knowing the sentiment from the right wing against Pete Buttigieg likely won't be so peaceful, but he still stands strong and says, as long as it is peaceful, I'm totally for it.
Ways. Be free from violence, intimidation, and harassment, but should never be free from criticism or people exercising their First Amendment rights.
So good, man. So I don't want to get in a whole analysis of Pete Buttigieg as a complete and total individual and politician. I think he made mistakes during the primaries. I think he has his flaws. I think all of these things. But as far as prominent members of the Democratic Party, he is undeniably one of the best communicators and one of the best messengers for the Democratic Party. As far as who I would want to select to go on Fox News, and you give me the options of Biden, Kamala, Buttigieg, and anyone else, I'm going to pick Buttigieg because he is so good at saying, who am I speaking to and how can I frame this conversation and deliver the points that I want to make in a way that will be the most effective for these audience members. So kudos to him. I think the way he answered that was perfect. And a lot of other Democrats should do a better job. Maybe they even analyze his appearances on Fox News to be better themselves at conveying and articulating the points that the Democratic Party should be making.